My name is Mark Fagan, the More Global Industry Leader of Manufacturing and Distribution and partner at Citron Cooperman, headquartered in New York City. I'm here with Tammy Gamble, part of the More Global M&D team and partner at the Bonadillo Group, headquartered in Rochester, New York, and Darren Berkelback, CEO of LBB Specialties, a leader in North American specialty chemical and ingredient distribution. We are here to talk about a few of the activities and opportunities Tammy and I have been helping our clients with, as well as what Darren and his company have been experiencing firsthand over the past several years. That is the continued thirst by consumers for innovation and offerings in food and nutrition, and second, how that catalyst and other market drivers continue to fuel the M&A market. Now, Darren, the food and beverage industry continues to be an important vertical for you. What are the hottest issues right now, and how are they affecting LBB Specialties?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mark. It has certainly been crazy times for our organization, for everyone that has businesses related to food and nutrition market. I think for us coming out of the pandemic and COVID, we are seeing major shifts in trends regarding that whole nutrition space and how that's interacting with the food space. Most notably for us, I think there's a real push for people not only choosing different foods to eat, but the reasons behind why they are choosing the different foods to eat. So we see a real shift, Mark, in terms of people really starting to look at and their eating habits moving to a point where they are making these healthy choices. And they're very specific. And what we're seeing is something that we haven't seen before. It's very focused. So when you take a person that is looking at how they want to make those healthy choices, they are picking things in two major sections. There's the whole calming, relaxation, and sleep recovery. How do I intake the right ingredients to help with that? And then there's this idea of this verbal retention, the ability to focus and the ability to perform. And those two breakouts have really changed, if you will, our focus in looking at our diverse product portfolio and driving towards those choices around whether it's just boosting your immune system or it's this cognitive health region that absolutely is a big deal for a lot of consumers out there. So there is a real shift there, Mark.
Yeah, and that is some of what we're seeing as well with the clients that we work with. One of them specifically right now, they're trying to check all the boxes with their products that they're manufacturing. Gluten-free, low carb, vegan friendly, and all of that comes into a lot of different research and development, and it's a real investment for the company.
It's interesting you'd mentioned that, Mark, specifically around that idea of the gluten-free, vegan, vegetarian, and choices that folks are making. What we're seeing is exactly what you're saying. The trend around those are becoming some lifestyle choices. They may not have celiac, but they want to go to a gluten-free diet and are following the products that do that. One other shift, Mark, that I think is important for everyone to realize, and sort of we are watching more people snack several times throughout the day than taking meals. In fact, surveys are saying that people are getting 60% of their nutrients from snacking as opposed to the traditional meal base throughout the day. So as that snack market looks at how do they fortify their materials, how do they get their products to have these supplements in them, that's a real move towards the lighter type vitamins being a part of that snack bar industry and anything with snacks. And a recent trend that we've seen is that's moving into the beverage market. How do they get those supplements, not taking a pill, but how do they get those supplements put into the beverages, whether it's sports nutrition or other beverage type snack beverages that are out there for everyone to consume. So big changes on that front.
Yeah, and it adds to some of what we saw in our Citron Cooperman manufacturing and distribution survey, which polled companies from 10 million to a billion in revenues during 2021. We're just finishing that now, and the top performers seem to be the ones that were offering new products and were actively investing in technology and e-commerce. And so the ones that are taking the risks and spending the money are the ones that are being rewarded the best. Now, I know, Tammy, a lot of your clients, we were talking about this earlier, um, are doing that as well. But one of the things that's been very helpful to innovation with our clients and companies around the world is a low cost of capital. But what are your clients thinking now, where we are going into a more expensive cost of capital on top of that with inflation?
Yeah, so I think one of the other hot issues that we're seeing in the industry is certainly the margin pressures and in inflation. Certainly not a topic that's unique necessarily to the food and beverage industry, but one that's top of mind for my clients and others in the food and beverage manufacturing, retail, and also consumers, of those products. From a company perspective, these rising costs are resulting in margin erosion, and to the extent that those can't be passed on to the retailers and ultimately to the consumers. These costs, I think, are being driven by several factors, including the ongoing supply chain issues, commodity pricing, transportation and fuel costs, labor shortages and costs. And these are, to name a few, that we have been seeing over the past several months as very prominent factors in the industry. The impact of these variables, I think, are unpredictable for companies and their ability to adapt quickly, maybe find alternatives that are affordable, improve processes, or make some production efficiencies. Is presenting a real challenge in the industry. And then certainly from a consumer standpoint, the concern of these current and rising costs on their, the way they consume, their weekly staples, whether it's eggs, milk, meats, or some of these other products, that Darren was alluded to in terms of, the change in the consumer trends. I would have to imagine that many folks out there are seeing these prices increase and are wondering how much higher these costs are going and whether their household income can sustain this continued increase.
Right. No, agreed. Darren, what's your thoughts right now, where we are in 2022, and how LBB Specialties is bracing for some of these inflationary pressures, as well as increased interest rates?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Mark, and I'll echo what Tammy was stating. I think these economic choices that consumers are having to make, they're having to make conscious decisions around it. As it pertains to us as an organization, we are impacted at every part of our business right now, Mark, whether it's logistics or costs behind, resources and people, and everything that we're doing is costing more. When you take a look at the price increases that have happened just in the last 6 months and 12 months, based on those costs going up, typically in specialty distribution, your price increases can sometimes be annual, or sometimes based on if the market is doing well, you would not see a price increase for perhaps 18 months. What we have seen is unprecedented in the last 6 months to 12 months, where prices on typical, very stable specialty products, they've gone up repeatedly. Sometimes in crazy cases, we've had prices that have been increased 3 times while the material and ingredients is on its way over into our warehouses. So when you stop and think about that, and you think about the impacts that Tammy was just explaining to our customers who need the products for production for end use, there are no options and no alternatives right now other than to absorb that price increase, and to the extent you can, keep your margin but expanding margins are more and more difficult at this point in time because we are in this with our customers. We're actually in this with our manufacturers, where all of us are unable to predict what those costs are going to be real time. So it is extremely interesting for us. And what are we doing around it? Well, I think it's important that we continue to have the manufacturers back, so to speak, and really work with them on predicting to the extent that they can. They know what the pressures are on their fuel intake and things like that that are driving their cost, and then openly communicating with the customer and talking through them or talking with them to work through these issues together and to a certain extent get closer to the customer, because right now having the product is more important than them having to deal with what pricing is, because in many cases the products that we are attempting to get to them, they're shutting down plants because they can't get material. So it is absolutely a crazy time, Mark, for the industry of distribution, and quite frankly, anyone that's in manufacturing or in use production.
Yeah, no, agreed. Now, Darren, LBB Specialties has had significant growth over the past several years, both organic and inorganic. But let's start with the M&A part of your growth. Which characteristics of a target are you most attracted to? Is it new verticals, geography, just revenue, add-ons? Tell us what you look for when you're looking at these potential acquisitions.
Yeah, so I think it's a little bit of all of that, Mark. I think in particular, we start with how well does an M&A target fit into our overall strategy? And speaking of the overall strategy, that strategy is not to be the biggest. What we want to do is focus very much on the product offerings that we have and how we go about serving our customers within our four major verticals. Food and nutrition is one of those, along with personal care, industrial, and our life sciences business. But as it pertains to every M&A target that we look at, first and foremost, it has to fit into our overall vertical strategy. It needs to be additive to what we're doing. We want to make sure that we do not create conflicts within the manufacturers and the principles that we are representing, but we want to look at it and we want to choose distributors as a part of that M&A that are going to give us the additional resources to drive throughout these markets. We want to find folks that have the high technical background, companies that have been spending a lot of time in laboratories of our customers and can really drive our specialty focus throughout the entire industry. So the M&A really starts there, Mark, and we whittle down, if you will, that funnel on those. For instance, we looked at many last year and only settled in 2 to pursue because it fit into one of the verticals and it was carrying the product lines that we are seeking as we continue to grow our overall presence in specialty distribution.
Yeah, how about you, Tammy? What are your clients looking for when they're buying companies?
Well, I think there's several areas, probably many of the things that you mentioned at the start of the question, and also that Darren alluded to. Certainly expanding into different product areas, but a couple other areas I think could be highlighted here that I see are talent acquisition and geographic expansion as a couple attractive characteristics. And I say generally speaking, finding and retaining great people is always a challenge and is certainly a priority. And oftentimes in these acquisition candidates, there's a lot of know-how and intuition that people have developed over the years as they've been involved with various companies that can be very beneficial to the combined entity post-acquisition. So actively identifying and retaining those individuals and aligning their interests, is key to that acquisition investment. And certainly in today's environment, finding qualified individuals with, the right capabilities to fill the roles and responsibilities that align with the overall strategic vision and also fit the existing culture, I think is a challenge that many companies are facing today. On the geographic expansion front, You know, oftentimes an attractive target is one that allows, a company to expand its footprint to other locations, whether it be regionally, nationally, or even internationally. And sometimes not necessarily looking to significantly branch into new product categories, but rather using those existing channels to get into new strategic markets. So I think finding a target that fits that need and affords the opportunity may be a very attractive candidate.
Yeah, and the talent one is something that came up a lot in our survey this year. Companies are basically saying that one of the biggest challenges um, is obtaining the right talent, and that's combined with the biggest factors that business owners see as a component of strong growth in the future is to be able to be best in technology. But the biggest obstacle to gaining those kind of technology advances is the ability for their current workforce to implement, adopt, and utilize technology. And so that talent level is really important for a company to continue to be on the cutting edge. And Darren, is that something that I know that you're doing, a lot of acquisitions, and now you're taking those acquisitions and trying to get the synergies. What are the things that are important to you about taking all of your current acquisitions and getting the best buck out of them as a combined group?
Yeah, so interesting question, Mark. I think can certainly echo your comments around technology. We made a significant investment recently to move to a common ERP system. And we take a delicate balance around that because everybody wants to point to these synergies or efficiencies that you get out of it. We've actually flipped the script on that, Mark, where what we are concerned about is what is our service level to the customer? And what is our service level to our principals? And how do we get the best out of our employees and put in their hands the technology from an ERP standpoint, from a CRM standpoint, from anything that we are doing, document control? How do we give them the nimbleness and flexibility to be best in class, to serve our overall principals and customers differently than everyone else? So it is a big part of that. And as we look at these M&A, or we look at the acquisitions that we've made, we have put together a team from every one of these divisions. And that team has representatives from the different departments that are within there, specifically working on best in class processes and procedures. Starting there with the end in mind of saying we are going to be the best and provide a differentiated service. There's a lot to unpack there. And in unpacking that, what we're wanting to do is then match that up with the investment and the ERP and say, these are the processes. How best can we go about it with your system? What modifications do we need to make? So when we come out on the other end of this, we have a top-notch system that is built for growth, but it is built on that service level that we are trying to achieve and give to our customers and principals.
Yeah, and that's a big challenge. Now, Darren, you just rolled out I guess, a whole new program for LBB Specialties. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's pretty exciting, Mark. So when we stepped back and we looked at how we got to where we are today on this journey of being LBB Specialties, a leading specialty distributor, we wanted to go back and look at the legacy of what we had from these 7 divisions, these acquisitions that we've made starting in 2017. And the common thread that we saw there is that we've been around in the marketplace for a very, very long time. And our most recent acquisition goes all the way back to 1920. And they've been servicing customers and they've been taking care of them for a lot of years, but doing it very well. These individual divisions built a very nice book of business. Some of them were national, some were regional. And when we stepped back and we looked at that, we want to make sure that we maintain that level of service and that feel to the customer. So we rolled out our new mission statement, which was distributing differently. And everything that we do has to be sent through that lens so that we actually are providing that differentiated service. It all starts with service, that delivering on that outstanding service that the customers have come to expect from us. But it is also being a technical solutions provider on behalf of our manufacturers as well as to our customers. So we're super excited about it, Mark. We rolled it out this week externally, and really wanting to continue to answer that question and show that as our North Star vision of where we are headed, what we are attempting to achieve. We're doing a lot of that already, but collectively as LBB Specialties, we're extremely proud of where we've come from, and we're extremely excited about where we're going. Mark, in conclusion, the distributing differently comes down to being a leader in specialty distribution. And what that means to us is that we want to provide that national breadth and local depth so that the customer feels that same differentiated service that they felt for all these years.
Well, congratulations on that, Darren. And that just echoes some of what we've seen in our survey results is the companies that are moving, not sitting still, investing in themselves, and taking some risks and trying to improve. Those are the ones that are usually the top quartile performers. So, Tammy, what about you as far as what are you thinking for the rest of 2022 and what your clients are thinking about as we are kind of getting into some uncertain times?
Yeah, so I think I'll circle back to some earlier comments, which really come to mind for me, and I think my clients are really focused on is the economic uncertainty and those inflationary pressures. I think we're going to continue to see some M&A activity in the food and beverage space in 2022, but I think that the financing and cost inflations are going to play a big factor for companies. I think that the significant inflation that we're experiencing will have an impact on the cost of capital, which is expected to increase throughout this year, and will really pose a challenge for companies and their ability to adapt to those rising interest rates, manage that uncertainty around interest rates and liquidity and inventory levels. And some companies may even find it prudent that they need to explore some other risk management strategies that they haven't considered in the past. So may need to spend some time in that area to help manage the business. I think as lenders start to review their portfolios, we might see some reduction in their risk appetite and some conservative lending practices. I think companies are going to continue to experience these supply chain issues and other inflation in the coming months, and business owners are going to need to be proactive in managing their balance sheets and their debt levels, focusing on cost containments and improvements in their processes, and certainly keeping an eye on this fluid pricing environment that we have that's impacting margins and market positions.
Yes, Tammy, well said. I think that is spot on, and I think there's going to be a lot more to talk about as 2022 continues. I want to thank both of you for participating. I think this was a great session, and look forward to doing it again.